All right, folks, how you doing? Ordinary Income back. I took a week off last week, mainly because I had a lot of stuff to do at work, a lot of projects to focus on, and there wasn't enough content really coming out for me to be like, I have to talk about this. A little bit of a lull, which usually happens this time, especially with markets. People know a lot about summer trading and just how summer is in the financial services industry. Let alone in just the news cycle, it's been a little bit slower. I didn't want to force anything, didn't want to read too much into some headlines, but we're back today with something I found this weekend, and that was from right here that the Senate blocks 48 billion aid package for small businesses, restaurants being included in there. How I saw this was I was perusing through Twitter and somebody retweeted this that I think originally came from The Hill, which is where this Yahoo Finance article is from as well, that on May 19th at 1:54 Eastern, the Senate passes the $40 billion Ukraine package, and then 1:45 Eastern of the same day, so about 2 hours later, they blocked the $48 billion aid package for restaurants. Now, I don't really know the Twitter account, but this has been proven to be true. These headlines are accurate. So why do I even care in the first place? One, obviously the optics of this is pretty bad. That we're sending foreign aid, yes. Local aid, no. Screw you for the most part. And I did a video, I think about a week ago. My recent video was about how all that $40 billion to Ukraine, I'm pretty skeptical on. I don't think it's going to exactly where we believe it's going. But I don't want to talk about that. We can juxtapose that all we want, but in particular, let's focus on this $48 billion. Why does it matter that small businesses aren't going to be getting this money? Well, there's not as many charts today. I just wanted to kind of roam around and give my ideas. The first thing I think about is how small businesses have been treated the past 2 years. We shut them down, first of all. America shut them down. In the beginning, you can argue that it might have been for the right reasons because we had no idea what was going on with COVID. But they stayed shut down while their competitors, the large corporations, stayed open. As we saw, Amazon, Microsoft, Walmart, they took a lot of market share. They took a lot of money, pretty much a lot of business from small businesses, and they were able to consume it themselves, thus reaching record profits. So while small businesses had to pretty much be locked up and they had all these limitations on how many people you can have come in, how many people you can serve, all that, and for the most part, if you're not digital, you're out of luck, their larger competitors thrived at a really interesting time. Not only because they were receiving more business coming in because they were digital, but they were also receiving stimulus in the capital markets. They were having the Federal Reserve come in and buy bonds, and in some case buying corporate bonds, which I had done a video about as well, and thus helping them kind of be able to stay afloat no matter what. There was always a buyer for their debt. They could issue out loans nonstop. Someone will buy it. So whatever research they had in mind, they could just issue a new loan out in the form of a bond. It will be purchased and they would receive the money at an interest rate that is laughably low as well. So they were pretty much receiving free money for the most part that they could pay off much later down the road. But in the meantime, small businesses, not only were they shut down, it's been a pretty rocky road for them to come back. We saw that I think about 30% of all small businesses are completely wiped away from the pandemic. They're not coming back. There was some talks about relief at the time, and there was the PPP loans. Unfortunately, during that time, a lot of people took advantage of the PPP loans, and what sounded like an infinite resource was actually much more finite. And that caused even a little bit more issues because you had a finite resources that was taken up by people that didn't need it. And we've heard a couple stories of people taking PPP loans and then buying something with it, doing something with it that they didn't really need. And in the end result, they kind of dried up the well for the places that really did need it. And that made it even tougher, especially when the government said, we're not really going to go and look into who took these loans. If, it's pretty much just like, you got it from us and okay, we're good. We're moving on, business as usual. So small businesses have been treated poorly. And now when you come out and say, we're not going to be giving them an aid package, again, the optics are pretty rough because I don't want to say it's one for one, saying they said no to 48 billion, so they could say yes to 40 billion to Ukraine. Obviously, that doesn't work like that all the time. It's not exactly one for one, although there is again a finite amount of money, and the government has to decide where it's going. But it's a rough time because of how the economy is shaping up. Small businesses have seen the worst of the layoffs. And they're receiving the worst of the treatment, in particular because, like I said, the example with Microsoft, that when they wanted to do research, and it's not just Microsoft, Amazon, any company that really issues stock, they're also having access to other markets, which most commonly is the bond market. The bond market is where they go in order to issue out debt usually in the form of 5, 10, 20, 30-year loans. And someone purchases that debt and they receive money that they can pay off, kind of like, they're pretty much issuing out mortgages. They're asking for, $1 million right away, and they're going to pay it back through the course of whatever the duration is of that bond, 5, 10, 20 years, with an interest rate. The benefit is that they get the money up front and they can do with it whatever they deem necessary, and they could pretty much, go into research and development. And I've given the example before that, let's say Apple has an idea of a product that can make them a lot of money. They'll issue out $1 million bond, and they'll pay it back over 10 years. Well, maybe in the first 3 years, they develop everything they want with like this new feature or this new product. And from there, years 1 to 3, they use the money to make everything. And then years 3 to 10, they're profiting off of it. So because of the loan they're able to get over the course of, that they can pay over the course of 10 years, they got the money right away, they used it efficiently, and they're already making money. So by the time that they're paying it off, they're already in the profit, and it's kind of like an expense that they can handle easily. You don't get that with small businesses. For small businesses, the equivalent of that is the government, that in order for them to receive a loan like that, in order for them to receive extra capital, they either got to find funding in the forms of kind of selling their business or selling parts or having someone maybe invest in it and thus, giving them a portion of equity, or in the form of grants from the government when times are tough. And when you don't have the government coming in giving grants and saying, we're not going to give you $48 billion to help stimulate small businesses, it's even worse. I think right here we have an article that nearly 90,000 small businesses are expected to close now after the bill has been extinguished. Because unlike the example of Apple, when a small business needs money, it's not really always to do research and development. Sometimes it is to pay off their employees to stay afloat, or maybe it is to even expand to make more money. But as we've seen recently, it's been a little bit more about can we help them kind of pay off their bills and have things going to the right places. I mean, it would have given $2 billion for gyms and fitness centers, $2 billion for live event companies, bus and ferry operators, companies of border crossings shut down during the pandemic. I think a little bit for minor league sports teams, but I know gyms, live events, bus and ferry operators. Live events are big in the summer, by the way. I think that's all for the breakdown there, at least from what I could see. But as we know that with the small business, it's a much bigger pulse of the economy because corporations have access to capital that small businesses and us individuals don't. So, when you see things like the stock market going down, it doesn't really matter because they're always able to issue out bonds. Now, if the bond market is in trouble, that's a little different situation that we'll talk about later. But as of right now, they're still able to issue it, they're still able to refinance. You can't do that with the small business. So when they're already kind of facing tough times, when they're having to do layoffs, when they're not able to meet their expectations, I mean, some small businesses aren't even able to stay open fully because they don't have enough people working, so they can't meet their profit margins. And you have the dual problems that I said. Some small businesses are laying off because they're not making enough money. Other small businesses aren't making enough money because they can't stay open long enough because not enough people are coming to work for them. Why aren't they? It's because the wages aren't high enough. But if you raise wages, if a small business raises wages for their employees, they have to make that money back somehow. It has to be kind of a one-for-one, that they have to raise their prices then in order to maintain their margins. Margins on grocery stores, in restaurants and gyms, they're pretty thin. So when something increases in the form of a wage, it has to be met somewhere else for the business to stay afloat and to meet, just to meet the survival that they have set for them. So when we're looking at small businesses here and this aid package not coming in, it's a little daunting because this aid is something that is needed right now. So you're having small business come out and saying that we're looking into a barrel of some deep trouble. We need some help. We'd like some help. And then the government says no. It's kind of the equivalent of a public company issuing its bonds and people saying we're not interested in buying them. And if a public corporation can't get people to issue out their debt, they can't survive. And in this case, if small businesses can't get relief that they need after being closed, reopening under restrictions, facing wages, the highest that they've ever probably had to pay, and then facing pushback really that either they're not paying their employees enough, but when they do pay their employees, they have to raise their prices, and then now they face pushback for raising their prices. It's really a tough time. And because they're not able to obtain their aid, I think this might be signaling some trouble. So what does it mean for you? I would say keep a lookout into the small business in your area. They're going to be the biggest indicator of how things might be going. If you realize, or if you recognize that they can't either staff, or you're starting to see lower hours that they're of operations, or even closings, it's going to be signs of trouble. Trouble coming a lot of our ways as well. Maybe not deep trouble, but it'll definitely be different from the times of expanding economy as we've seen the past 15 years. But I still think this is just an interesting time to come out with these headlines, an interesting time to say no to helping small businesses. And again, I could do a whole nother video just talking about this dichotomy here, that we're passing an foreign aid package and saying no to a domestic aid package. So it is what it is. Leave your comments and your thoughts below. I'm always willing to entertain them. I'll leave my Twitter for everyone to follow me. Usually I'm just retweeting things that I think are interesting. Sometimes I give my thoughts, but I like to retweet some valuable charts or just resources, overall thoughts that people have that are pretty smart as to what they're seeing going on. So that's all I have for today. Keep an eye out. As always, what does it mean for you? I think you should always be sharpening up our skills, doing what we can to bring more value to the economy and really to the country, and that is by productivity. So keep an eye out. All the best, folks. I'll be back later this week, a couple times in the week, to shoot out some more videos. And until then, I hope you all stay safe and enjoy.